Hey, welcome everybody. It's another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. We're at episode number 171 today. On today's episode, we're going to power up a planer, and we're going to talk about, now, what is a sawtill anyway? We'll also do a couple of other updates about what's going on here at Woodsmith, ShopNotes, and Popular Woodworking. Quick check-in with last episode and a couple of comments and questions there. First of all is, what is Logan snacking on?
So I was snacking on the lunch, so I fast during the day. So usually it's like 3 o'clock, which I think is when we were filming that last one, is when I have a snack and then I eat dinner, and that's all I eat during the day. It is the fasting snack of champions, a sugar-free Red Bull and pistachios.
There we go.
Pre-shelled pistachios. I personally like the ones in the shell because I like the interactive eating, but my wife she doesn't have time for that crap, so she buys the $85 bag from Costco. That's what I was snacking on.
I feel like in the next episode you're just gonna be sitting there with a walnut cracker and just be cracking a walnut and just.
So I did that last night. I cracked enough for a cup to make a walnut cake last night.
Okay.
Don't ask me how the walnut cake turned out because I forgot the baking powder, which doesn't make it rise. So it was more like a walnut
brownies.
Bread, kind of. Yeah, I mean, kind of. Yeah, it was like a banana bread. Mm-hmm. The cup of walnuts took me an hour to crack. Okay.
So you're burning the calories that you're eating,
yes.
So it's like a net zero snack.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So. It was a labor of love.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just another proof that our phones and electronics are listening to us. I have not searched anything to do with walnuts, and my YouTube and TikTok and everything is just full of walnut gathering solutions and husking solutions and cracking solutions and everything. So it's listening.
That's a delight. All right. Puppy Doc writes, sorry to hear about your injury, Phil. My wife is convinced I will at some point lose an appendage or digit due to my woodworking activities. Most of my woodworking is late at night after she goes to bed. I have injured myself once or twice. So far, none of my injuries have required a trip to the ER yet. Since I am a veterinarian, I may have a bit of an advantage at avoiding the ER. The most severe injury happened almost a year ago while working at the drill press with a 2-inch Forstner bit hollowing out a shallow bowl form. Don't ask. I know I did something not so smart. The hardest part was waking up my wife for assistance, removing the third of thumbnail that was still partially attached to the hamburger tip of my thumb. When I woke her, I did have to caution her that she was not waking up to a bloody stump as she predicts. Yet, like a good husband, I take it as my duty to prove her wrong. I just wish I didn't have to try so hard.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
There you go.
I feel like as a lifelong woodworker, it's just a matter of time. No matter how careful you are, it's just something will happen eventually.
You'll end up in the ER?
No, just there'll be some sort of injury. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I slice myself regularly.
Right.
But usually it's I'm digging around in a tool cabinet looking for something, and I find a travisher that doesn't have a sleeve on it or something.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So just stay vigilant out there, everyone. Keep your head on a swivel. The tools are coming for you.
Yeah. Stephen Draper says, while styrofoam sheets do not absorb moisture from the air, it can absorb water it comes in direct contact with. We were talking about your under slab insulation on your shop.
Yep. And I think, and I could be wrong, I think that is so there is extruded and expanded polystyrene. So you got the white beady foam, and then you got the extruded pink stuff. I don't think the pink stuff does. The white stuff definitely does. It gets waterlogged. I don't think the pink stuff does, but I have been wrong.
Yeah, I think it's closed cell and open cell foam.
Bingo, that's right.
If you use closed cell foam, it shouldn't.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not a foam expert.
Yeah, he also follows up with the Osage orange tree at maturity can grow 35 to 50 feet tall with a trunk diameter up to 2 feet.
Not in Iowa, they don't.
I would like to see these.
I bet you get further down south, they probably do because there's a longer growing season. In Iowa, we get like a foot.
One of the questions that I have about Osage orange, then, if this guy's reporting that they get that big, is Osage orange a forest tree then that it's competing and then gets bigger? If it's going to get a trunk diameter of 2 feet and then that tall.
Yeah. Now, okay.
Because around here, Osage orange is like, we always call it like a fence row tree.
Yeah. Let me backtrack a little bit. What comes out of the ground generally in Iowa is only about a foot, maybe a little bit bigger. They do generally fork, at least here in Iowa, like 3 or 4 foot off the ground. So I've seen them, they'll go up and then out.
Yeah.
So they'll get that big crotch on them, that big orange crotch. And so I can see that. Now I don't generally see them in the timber. I see them around the edges.
Yeah.
Of the timber, or like mainly fence rows. Sometimes in like, creek beds that run through the middle of fields and stuff. Not to say that that's, native how they would have grown. I have actually my biggest bow buck that I've shot. I drew on him as he crossed behind an Osage orange tree that was in the middle of the timber. That's the only one I've ever seen. But it was on the edge of a field, and I know when my grandparents farmed that field went further. So I'm guessing that hedge tree was probably on the edge of the field at one point. So
yeah.
I don't know. I'm just imagining what a mess a 75-foot tall hedge apple tree would make.
Yeah, and that's fair also. So it's kind of interesting. Anyway, we'll pick up a couple other comments on here. One is a little bit of a bite here. Logan, sorry my Bills beat up your Dolphins. Can't wait for the rematch.
Yeah, especially now that the Bills are missing 2 of their defensive stars. Watch out.
Yeah.
The Miami track and field team's coming for you.
All right, before we go any farther, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor for today's episode. It's Epilogue Laser. You can quickly and easily customize your woodworking projects for added beauty and value. Learn more at epiloglaser.com. Then 2 more from Stephen Draper for comments from the last one. We were talking about the straight gouge that I was working on. And he asked, what is the process to retemper steel?
What type of steel?
Well, like that chisel.
Well, I mean, I guess the thing is that every different steel has a different tempering process and tempering or hardening. I'm guessing he doesn't want tempering, he wants hardening because they're 2 different things. Hardening is making the steel hard so it will hold an edge. Tempering is reducing that hardening so it's not brittle. So it's refining the grain structure of the material. So it's not brittle. So for that one in particular, and generally like O1 tool steel, which is O as in the letter, not the number. It's not 01, it's O1, and O1 stands for oil quenching tool steel. So for something like that, which, most crucible or cast steel will be some form of O1 tool steel. I'm not a metallurgist, so if there is one listening, you can crucify me for all you want. You heat it to a very particular temperature. I don't know exactly what the temperature is because I don't know how to measure that. I don't have a way to measure that. But O1 tool steel's hardening temperature is very, very close to the non-magnetic temperature of it. So you heat it up until a magnet does not stick to it.
Yeah.
Once it's at that temperature, you quench it in oil if it's O1. So there are water hardening steels where they are quenched in water instead of oil. It's a much faster quench. Plus, you don't get all the sweet smoky steam. and then you check it with the file. If the file skates across it, great. It's hard. If a file bites into it, you did something wrong. And there are different levels of hardness you will get. So like you do the same steel a couple of times, different temperatures, it will get a different hardness. As long as the file skates, I've always called it good. O1 tool steel sharpens so nicely. It's a joy to sharpen and gets razor sharp. So if I have to sharpen a little bit more, so be it.
Yeah.
So that's broad general overview.
Yeah. And then after that is when you would do the heat treating process where you heat it
Correct.
up to, you're only heating it up a couple of 100 degrees.
Yes.
Where it's not glowing or anything.
Yes.
And then
usually
for a longer term.
Yeah. 400 to 450 for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And then you let it air cool. So you shut, like when I've done like plain blade irons and stuff, you do the whole heating, quenching, throw them in the oven at 450 for 4 or 5 hours, and then you just shut the oven off and let everything naturally cool down.
Yeah.
So that's the broad overall process by somebody that doesn't know much about it.
You just got Logan splained, tempering and hardening.
Yep.
And then the final one is also from Steven. Logan, you were talking about your workshop and projects that you wanted to make for it. One of them you said was a saw till.
Yes.
And that you were going to do that as a project then for Popular Woodworking.
The next issue. Yep.
So can you explain what the heck is a saw till?
A saw till is a saw rack, basically. I don't know where the term till came from. Phil may? I have no idea. It's basically a rack that holds all your saws vertically. Think of a bookshelf for saws is basically what it is. Which kind of becomes problematic when you start looking at the variety of lengths, handle styles, spines on saws. Like, you got back saws, you got panel saws, you got gent saws, you got all these different types of saws. It's hard to hold them all. If you had just panel saws, great. You need a block with some slits in it to hold the blade, and then you need a dowel for the handle to sit on.
Right.
But once you start like talking about, gent saws or back saws or all, short stubby saws, whatever they are, they become a little different. I actually have the one that I think, Phil, you put the plan up last week.
John did. So we'll put it up as a free plan for this issue or for this episode for a saw till that was in Woodsmith magazine.
Yep. And that's the one I currently have. I actually have that one that was photographed for the magazine in my shop downstairs. And it works pretty well. But I have a couple of panel saws that are too long for it. So they're very awkward sitting in there. And that one was custom designed for, whatever saws we had in the photo studio at the time. So my saws don't really fit in there real well. And now I have way too many saws for that one. I think that one maybe holds 8 saws, maybe 9. And I have way more than that. So, yeah.
Maybe you need to get rid of saws.
No. Shut your filthy mouth. I did give away a bunch of saws. So
I remember there was interest in certain types of tools kind of ebbs and flows, especially in the internets with woodworking. And this was a handful of years ago when interest in saws was peaking again. And I don't remember where I saw it, was a discussion whether a saw till was actually a traditional way of storing and organizing your hand saws, or if the idea of a saw till came from commercial displays of saws in hardware stores and that kind of thing, general stores, that kind of thing. So you would have Distin would have their full line of tools on display at the local Ace or whatever, and they would have them in a saw till, but that wasn't necessarily how a craftsperson would do that in I don't remember where
yeah.
that debate landed,
I
but
think that's
it is
fair.
kind of an interesting
Yeah.
kind of side note on it.
I did see probably last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, on one of the handsaw collecting groups that I'm on Facebook. Somebody had a Simmons saw display from a hardware store somewhere, and it was like think of like you walk into Walmart, you see the gun carousel back in the sporting section. It was like that, but for saws. So all the saws were like on this turning carousel, which was pretty cool. It was I think they said that one was from the 40s, which was kind of neat. So
that'd be kind of cool.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't make it less functional or usable.
No,
it's just kind of an interesting way to think about where the inspiration comes from for certain things.
And if you think about like a traditional craftsman that would have been making their living using saws, they probably had 3 saws, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like they had 2 panel saws and maybe a dovetail saw. And that was probably it. Like tenon saws, maybe some trades had them.
It probably depends on what they were doing. It was maybe because I kind of wonder, because there was a fascination with dovetail saws for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
And dovetail saws, the small ones, are ideal if you're doing dovetails in drawers.
Yeah.
But if you're doing carcass dovetails, then a carcass saw is probably a little better of a saw for doing dovetails in thicker stock.
Yeah. So I mean, but really, like, is there any craftsman from the mid 1800s that would have had 30 saws? I doubt it.
Right.
So if you're a craftsman from the 1800s listening to this podcast, just let us know.
Right.
Yes.
We'd like that information.
But I mean, you know what I mean? So it's like I could see a sawtill probably not being a traditional type of storage. Like I'm guessing saws were probably hung on a peg in a shop.
Yeah.
So or in a toolbox, or because like you said, they didn't have that many. Probably had that many saws.
Yeah.
But I don't know what were carpenters like back then. Were they more specialized, or
probably? I guess I don't know.
Where it's it's a hobby now, so it's like I do all kinds of different, woodworking. So I got lots of different kinds of saws. Whereas, you had, people that made cabinets or people that did construction or
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, kind of cool.
Speaking of saws, so my guy Jared, that's over at Blue Spruce making saws, heard our discussion about benches a couple of weeks ago, and he sent me a big long email about the bench he just built because he moved from, I think, the Carolinas up to Ohio to work with Blue Spruce building them saws, and he has a bench that he installed an Emmert pattern maker vise on. So he sent me a bunch of photos of it, and I'm like, this is awesome. So he kind of got me some insider information on somebody that's already done it. So I'm like, all right, cool. I learned from what he did, and his looks pretty good. It looks really good. He actually has cast iron legs on his bench.
Oh,
I think he told me where he thought they were from, but I'll have to go back and look.
I mean, Lee Valley sold a set of cast iron.
No, these are vintage ones. I
think. Ones. Okay.
Yeah. I'm pulling up his email to see what he said. Google says that the bench legs are probably from an early 1900s press, likely an arbor press.
Okay.
So they're pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I remember we had a bench in the shop that had a pattern maker's vise on it. I think it was the Lee Valley one they were making for a while. And I don't know that it got used all that often in the flippy, turny, rotating sort of sense.
Yeah. Well, and I guess we've had this discussion before. It's like, if you're going to use a lot of the times a pattern maker's vise like this becomes a glorified face vise.
Sure.
It just is what it is. And that's fine if you have it. Like, I mean, that's fine. But the ability, to me, it's really cool to have the ability to flip it Especially since I'm not doing a leg vise on my bench. So being able to flip it to hold stock in a different angle. I actually really noticed that when we were working on that Democratic chair seat, it's like, boy, if you had a way to hold this at this angle, that would make this a whole lot easier. So being able to flip stuff would be really nice. So,
and now you will.
Yes. Well, yes. In several months from now.
When you have this bench done, now you will.
Yes. So.
Speaking of Workbench, I was carving a sign on my Workbench at home, which I had looked up. That's just over 2 years old now since I made that.
Out of the diaper stage? Well,
yep.
Maybe.
And it was a delight because carving this white pine sign with hand tools makes all kinds of big chips of wood. And it was nice knowing that they were all going to stay on the floor in a location where I could easily clean them up.
The other thing that I noticed, bench?
Yeah. The other thing that I noticed is because I'm working on another sign here in the shop, and the bench here is maple, stout, thick, blah, blah, blah. And I have my bench at home that's white fir for the top and Douglas fir for the base, essentially. Is how much more deadening mallet blows on my bench were.
Really?
Almost to the point that they felt more effective. And I don't know if it's just the way the bench is built or if because I have a softwood top that unlike maple, I'm not getting like a bounce back.
See,
that's just totally made up. That I have absolutely no basis in that. So I fully admit my ignorance.
You know where I would go with that?
Okay.
I would look at the floor. I wondered if, because you're on concrete at home.
Yeah, but I'm up on like the dimpled plastic plus 3/4 inch.
Yeah, that's fair.
Plywood or OSB, tongue and groove OSB.
Yeah, I am skeptical of everything on our studio floor.
It's pretty squishy.
It's very squishy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it very well could be that the bench is absorbing a lot more of it.
Yeah.
But I
it was just kind of an interesting because I had been working on the one sign here and then the same day or the next day and then noticing a very different feedback from mallet and gouge work. Tools were exactly the same because I just take them back and forth with me. Special shout out to Epilogue Laser and their cool set of tools that allow you to customize and make unique woodworking projects. You can check out all that they have at epiloguelaser.com.
That's one thing I noticed when I got Steven's drawings for this shaker style bench the other day. I believe he used material on its face for the top. So I think he used 2-inch thick stock for the bench top, and then
flats on.
And then he built out the aprons on the dog hole side, operator side, which is, I think I'm gonna go thick top the whole way. I like them thick, so and his design is actually a traditional style bench with legs. So it has 3 or 4 inches gap between the lower rails and the floor, so shavings get under there. But he added molding around it, so kind of an interesting style.
Yeah, cool. It'll be fun to see yours start taking shape there.
Yeah.
One of the things you're going to need in getting a bench built, especially if you're starting with rough material, is a solid planer.
I know. I was telling John before you got on that I'm just sitting in here running stock through the planer. My planer is running, not the jointer. Okay, I want to be very clear. I've had a lot of people ask about the big, huge 24-inch jointer. That thing is not running yet. I'm still waiting on a head. there's a lot of things that need to happen after the head gets here, but the head is kind of the pivot point of the whole thing. The planer is running. I got my VFD hooked up. It's pretty sweet. I did the wiring yesterday. So I think we talked about the VFD, how it basically converts single phase to three phase.
Yeah.
I wired that east wall outlets yesterday, or the day before, and then I get the VFD hooked up. So what I decided to do was mount the VFD to the wall, run an outlet underneath, and I'll put a picture on the show notes page. So there is, the VFD has a cord that plugs into the 220 on the wall. There is a three-phase outlet coming out of the VFD that's mounted to the wall. So then the planer, I ran a whip out of the motor to the outlet. Okay? So instead of having the power buttons on the planer, they're still there. They just don't go anywhere. Now, to turn that planer on, you just walk over to the VFD and press the run button, and it turns on. Press the stop button, it turns off.
Now, the VFD, for the non-technical people, is essentially like a phone modem for your computer.
Yes, basically. That's exactly what it is. Yes, for the non-technical people. I think I said this last time we were talking about the VFD. There's like 300 different parameters you can set in this thing. So it's basically a little computer. And you can make the VFD do weird stuff. So what I did is I took a photo of it. I bought this VFD on Amazon. I think we put a link on the last time we were talking about this to the Amazon. Yeah. I sent a picture of my motor plate to the company that makes this VFD or that sells it. They sent, within 15 minutes, they sent me back, here's all the parameters you need to set. Okay, cool. I was a little concerned because everything on the control panel is all in Mandarin. I mean, it's all in wingdings. You know, like I can't read it. I mean, there's
apologies to the people who speak and write.
We love their oranges.
No, so. I mean, it's all in characters, right? I mean, there are abbreviations like PRG for program or ETR for enter, like stuff like that. You could definitely tell reading the manual, which I thought I had sitting here, that it is not a native English because they wrote the manual. So I was a little concerned about the programming of it because I've done some PLC programming and stuff at previous careers, and you can get really into the weeds, and they can be a little like, you know, hold the program and the enter button and then press the up arrow to save the program. Like there could be weird stuff like that. This one was so simple to program.
Okay.
It took me 3 minutes to hit all the parameters that they sent. And then the first time I turned it on, I'm not going to lie, I put my squints on and kind of stood back and hit the run button to see what happened. And the motor, one of the parameters I set was the startup and slowdown times, because you can basically have the VFD act like a soft start. So instead of immediately jerking the motor on, it takes, you know, however long you tell it, you know, take 10 seconds to speed up, take 10 seconds to slow down. It took like 2 minutes to speed up and 2 minutes to slow down. It was when I was going through the parameters, I remember setting the 10-second speed up and slow down time. So I'm like, I don't know what I actually set. So I set some parameter for 10 seconds. I don't know what it was. Right. I don't think it affects this motor. But after that first run where I'm like, okay, that took 4 minutes of speeding up and slowing down. I went back in, changed them, and now it starts up and slows down right away, like 10 seconds. I think I actually have it set for a 6-second startup and 6-second speed slow down. And then I also discovered that there's a potentiometer on it. So that's another thing that a VFD can do, is it can control speed. That's actually how lathes work. So there's a VFD in all lathes that are variable speed. Okay. That the VFD is converting to three-phase power, but that's also controlling the speed of the lathe. There's a knob on there. I assumed one of the parameters that Mulum, the company that made this VFD, had me set was to just basically shut that potentiometer off. It was not. So I turned it on this morning after we first talked this morning. I turned it on, and I'm like, I wonder if this potentiometer works. And it was turned to the slowest speed. And I went, wing, and the whole thing just revved up. So it was like, oh, hey, there's the throttle. So cranked it up all the way. But it's awesome. The thing is, like, it's amazingly, for being it's an 18-inch planer. So it's a bigger planer than most people have, but it's not a 36-inch planer. It's a big planer.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly quiet. Like,
okay.
I could turn it on and I could sit here and probably podcast. You'd hear it, but it wouldn't be like you're not yelling over top of it, which is really nice. I will have to mess with a couple of the feed rollers. I think there's some adjustments. There's actually a lever that you can adjust the feed roller pressure.
Okay.
Like on the fly. So it's like, oh, if it's not grabbing, you can turn the pressure up. I don't know if the feed rollers are a little gunked up. They don't look like it, but they may have been worn down enough that I need to replace the feed roller. There's like little segmented teeth on them.
Oh,
yeah. I just might need to get a new set of those and drop them in there. I did just wax the bed of it before we started podcasting, so that should help with the feeding as well. Because it was a little bit of trying to feed it through kind of was a little, it wasn't rough. It just, once it grabbed. It just took a minute for it to grab. So
yeah,
we'll see. But yeah, I'm so pumped about this. I literally last night made my wife come out here and watch me turn it on.
She loved it.
Oh, she's like, you're so stupid. But I am so excited. And I have realized that the combination of a jointer and a planer in one kind of footprint is great in theory until you have a 36-inch bandsaw sitting next to them. And then it's like, oh, they don't nest together as nicely as I was hoping. So we're going to have to see what happens when because I have the smaller 8-inch jointer in here right now. We're going to have to see what happens when the 24-inch one comes in, because those two machines combined take up quite a bit of footprint. So,
yeah. But yeah, those two are like the devastator of
shop space.
Shop tools joined together.
Yeah.
It's big.
I am hoping that because the jointer that I have right now is it's an 8-inch Delta. It's a DJ20. Like it's a good sized jointer. But it just doesn't nest very well. It's an awkward size where it doesn't sit over top of the motor for the planer, because the motor sits off one side of the planer. So it's like it doesn't sit over top of the motor, but the fence extends too far back to really nest nicely, and then it has a sheet metal base on it that doesn't nest real nice. So I'm wondering if I get the bigger planer or the bigger jointer in here, if it actually will nest a little bit nicer. I don't know. We'll see. It's a shop journey. Let's be honest. I don't have any hardline dust collection in here yet, so nothing's permanent. And
I think it's funny that's what makes it permanent is.
Well, I got a pallet jack. I can move it around.
Yeah,
I can. I did. I was going to say I did make sure as I'm positioning stuff. The only thing that is never moving is that big bandsaw. That thing is staying where it's at because I did not put runners underneath it.
Sure.
I put runners under the planer, thinking, okay, if I want, I can wheel the planer out of the way, like so I can get the pallet jack underneath it.
Right.
Lift it up. So,
yeah. Well, because if you were to put runners underneath the bandsaw, you'd have to build like a pulpit to operate the bandsaw.
Yeah. The table would be where this red line is on my shirt. So you'd be like using Daddy's bandsaw. So, but I will say, seeing how easy that VFD was to get to run. Now, I don't want to speak to the quality of the VFD because it was a very cheap VFD. I mean, it was $250.
Right.
A good American made like Allen Bradley or something is almost $1,000. So like, I can't speak to the quality and the longevity of it, but the ease of use was phenomenal. It makes me so. Last night I'm shopping for bandsaw tires for a 36-inch bandsaw. I'm shopping for 18.5-foot blades. Like, I'm ready to get this bandsaw running now.
Because you'll need one for that and the jointer, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
I will. So, yeah. And I think I kind of like this style where it's like, oh, just throw the VFD on the wall and an outlet underneath and plug the machine into the outlet, because then it's not tied to the VFD, so I could theoretically sell that planer. I still have the VFD sitting there, so I can just wheel another 3-phase planer in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I did talk to my dad's an electrical engineer, or a industrial electrician by trade, so he deals with these all the time. I called him last night. I'm like, hey, so I got this VFD running. I didn't say this. I got this VFD running, but the planer's running backwards. I was like, I didn't think that was possible, because with 3-phase, you have 3 legs coming in. You have 3 hot leads and a ground wire, okay? With 220 single phase, you have 2 hot leads and a ground wire. Sometimes you have a neutral in there if there's something 110 on the machine.
Right.
With 110 or 120, you have a hot lead and a neutral and then a ground. So you have all these different combinations of wires. Long story short, 3-phase has 3 hot leads and a ground. It doesn't really matter where they go. However, when you swap out one of those leads, it will run in reverse. It doesn't hurt anything. The motor just runs in reverse.
Right.
So he's like, just open up the motor. He's like, I call him. He's like, hey, this thing's running in reverse. I just need to swap one of the leads, right? He's like, yep. He's like, you basically have a 50-50 shot on whether you wire it right or not the first time. He's like, just swap a lead. It doesn't matter which one you swap. Just swap one. Just swap 2 of them. So I swapped 2 of them, and all of a sudden she's running in the right direction. So
there you go.
It was kind of fun. So, yeah. But I'm looking at this big bandsaw. I was actually looking at it a little bit earlier. I don't know if these wheels have a crown to them or not. So
possible they don't.
Yeah, I was watching. So Keith Rucker is a gentleman that runs a website called VintageMachinery.org. He also has a YouTube channel. Guy's phenomenal. Like, the guy
I think he's
is
Darius's cousin.
Yes, he is. Darius Rucker and Keith Rucker.
Fudd Rucker. Don't forget Fudd.
Yeah, I forgot about Fudd. So he's actually restored several of these old Crescent bandsaws. He's actually working on a 42-inch for Jimmy DiResta.
Okay.
He said he likes the. I've actually emailed him back and forth with the planer, and he I think he might do a little bit of machining on my bearing blocks for this, for the planer or for the jointer. But he said he likes the Crescents because they come with pre-crowned wheels on them. So you basically, with a bandsaw, you have 2 options for tires. You have urethane or you have rubber. Okay, urethane's more common now. They don't need glued on. They stretch on. They don't sag, or they do sag as they're spinning, but they stretch right back to shape. Rubber, you have to glue on with either contact cement or epoxy. When they make urethane tires, they can pre-crown them. So the tire itself has a crown to it, so you don't have to do anything. With rubber tires, you put them on, you stretch them on, then you have to shove a dowel in between the tire and the wheel and kind of roll it around as you're applying glue and epoxy around the entire tire, which, I mean, it's a pain in the butt, but it is what it is. But then you have to come back and crown the tires. So you have to manually, like, sand a taper on both sides of the tire. That sounds like a pain in the butt. I don't want to do that. However, if this has a crown in it already, then I don't have to sand it. The rubber tires for 36-inch bandsaw, I can get a pair of rubber tires for $60. The urethane ones are like $300. So I don't really want to spend the $300 if I can help it.
Yeah, the urethane ones are usually so much better though. Like, they last
longer
and they don't groove as easily.
I know. But then I also was looking at bandsaw blades, and bandsaw blades are expensive. Like, for that big a saw.
Yeah.
Like, I do want to ask you guys that, though. Is there any benefit in your minds to a wider bandsaw blade for resawing? So I can put a 2-inch wide bandsaw blade on this saw. So I'm thinking this is going to be my resawing saw, right? Like that's what I'm going to use this saw for.
Right.
Is there a benefit to getting a 2-inch wide blade versus a 1-inch wide blade?
I've never had any problems with a 1-inch blade where it's like, well, you know what? I wish I had a wider blade. So it's like, but never use a 2-inch blade. So stuff to compare.
What's the one that we have on the big Laguna in the shop now?
It's a 3/4 inch blade, I think.
Is that all it is?
It might be a 1 inch, but I think it's 3/4. It's not any wider than 1.
Right.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking it's probably 1. Feels.
But I wouldn't get a 2-inch.
I wouldn't do a 2-inch one, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see from a sawmilling standpoint. The wider blade you go, the longer the blade lasts, and the straighter it cuts. You could put more pressure against it, okay? Because there's more spine material, right? There's not that much cost difference in them. Like getting a 1-inch versus getting a 2-inch is not much more expensive. It's like $30 more. Is it going to look sweeter? Oh yeah, it'll look sweeter with a 2-inch blade.
Yeah.
But I did. So it's saved on my computer downstairs. There's a company that makes 2-inch wide. Actually, I can get a Laguna Resaw King that's 2-inch wide. Variable space tooth that's carbide tipped, and they say you can resharpen them 4 times. So to me, that's not that bad because it's like if you buy a $300 blade that's that long, and I can have it resharpened 4 times, like that's pretty good.
Right.
And the resharpening is like $30.
Yeah.
So that's really not that bad when you think about it, especially seeing how the Resaw King we have for our Laguna in the shop there that you were just talking about, Phil, that was $200.
Oh, was it?
Oh yeah. So it's like, really, you had the extra length. It's not that much more. But I just kind of want to, I don't know. It's one of those things like, do you make this a straight line saw only? Because you're not cutting any form of radius with a 2-inch blade.
Right.
Like maybe like a 12-foot radius. But I don't know. It's also very odd to me that the big bandsaw is a right-hand fence instead of a left-hand fence.
Right.
So the fence is on the right-hand side of the saw instead of the left-hand side. Which, from a resawing standpoint, makes perfect sense to me. Because it's like if I'm going to resaw, I mean, I resawed all this alder, right?
Yeah.
It would be so much easier to hold the material up against the fence with my left hand and push with my right hand. You can't do that with a standard bandsaw fence. So, I don't know. It's just, I don't know.
I mean, so you then just push with your left hand and hold it up with your right hand.
Yes,
right?
yes. But when you're resawing this much, it's much easier to do it with your right hand.
Why?
In my opinion. My right hand's way stronger than my left.
Well, now it's going to get all out of proportion. It's going to get huge.
Yeah.
And I'm just little tiny atrophied left arm. It's like a lobster with big pincher, little pincher.
Yeah. I'm going to start moving the table saw rip fence to the other side now.
That's right.
You guys
yes.
Don't
use
skip
the
leg
table
day.
saw. Use the table saw left-handed.
Wouldn't that make more like? To me, that makes sense, doesn't it? No.
Yeah.
No.
I'm left-handed, dude. The
I know you
bandsaw
as a
is my tool.
Right-hander. I'm going to agree with Logan that
Thank you.
It would be easier. I mean, if you're doing a lot of resawing, if you're just doing a little bit, then it's like doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Now that the whiny portion of the episode is...
I'm just saying. I understand that Phil does not have many tools that are set up for him, and the bandsaw is one that we cannot take away.
It's like, I got one thing.
Right.
But
Yeah.
back when this bandsaw was made, you beat the left hand out of your kids. You make them right-handed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So none of that Satan hand here. It's like, going back to the football thing for a second. The Miami Dolphin quarterback, he throws left-handed, right? He's right-handed. He does everything right-handed except throw a football. His dad made him throw left-handed when he was younger.
Was he a baseball player too?
I think he was.
Because that would be a thing. Like, if you're going to be a left-handed pitcher, that's where the money's made.
Yeah.
Throw left-handed.
Yeah.
Maybe he bats left too, like that.
Maybe. Switch hitter.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
All right. That's fair.
Yeah. Do you guys think that dust collection on a bandsaw is futile?
Yes and no.
That doesn't answer my question. That
feel
doesn't help me.
Okay. I feel like dust collection on a bandsaw is helpful, but it's a kind of a fool's errand in the sense that there's always going to be dust falling on the table. I've never seen a bandsaw that has a real solid level of dust collection. Like you can get a nice cabinet saw, table saw that has decent dust collection on it.
Yep.
Where it's not spraying in your face.
Yep.
And your cut line stays pretty clear. Like that Powermatic that we have in the shop on the set right now, I feel when it's hooked up right, and the shroud hose goes right to the, like it does a good job. And even the saw stop ones we have in the shop, they do a decent job.
Yeah. With
a bandsaw, it feels like there's always something that's getting through.
Do you feel like the dust collection on the bandsaw kind of keeps the inside of the bandsaw from filling up, but everything that's on the outside is just going to be there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with that statement, knowing how little we actually use the dust collection on the TV set bandsaw.
Yeah.
And how every time we go to change the blades, like, hold on, go get the snow shovel because you got to scoop it out. And the reason I asked this is because I was kind of trying to, earlier this morning, I was looking at the bandsaw tires, trying to figure out if they were actually crowned or not, which means I'm going to have to cut the rubber off to put a straight edge on them. See if they're crowned.
You're going to have to anyway, though.
I mean, I kind of wanted to film it because I think it would be an interesting video doing new tires on it. So I kind of was saving it. But anyways, there's no dust. There's no dust collection on this saw.
Yeah.
There's none. It is kind of cool. I'll take a picture for the show notes page. There's a pocket underneath the blade guards. So like go under the table, you got the blade guides, which are on the crescent saws are like cool blocks for the front. And then there's a giant 3.5-4 inch bearing for the back for the thrust. But it's not on edge, it's on the face. So it spins this way. Instead of following the blade. But right below that, there's a piece of hardwood that has been slit and it sits at an angle, almost like it is a dust collection chute.
Right.
And there's actually a little opening on the side of the saw case, but there's no dust collection port.
Oh.
So
the Lagunas have that too, where you have like
a
little piece that slides in there.
Yes, they do. And I don't know. Even with this Powermatic, I have the Laguna has it, Powermatic has it. My 14-inch Powermatic did not have it, but the Laguna and the bigger Powermatic have 2 ports on them.
Okay.
So there's one up by the bearings, one on the bottom for the lower wheel.
Yeah.
In the shop, we have it connected with a Y. I have it connected with a Y here as well, and it pulls a lot of air, but you still get the dust coming from the top. So I don't know. Maybe with the 36-inch you won't. Maybe all is going to go in the bottom of the case. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But it makes me happy being able to plane my material here, not through my little freaking rigid lunchbox planer that I have. Not that it's a bad planer. It's just there's a lot of different. Even, I mean, this is a 5-horse American-made motor. I can take more off on this planer, and I did this morning, than I would do through our newer Laguna. It just isn't as nice of a motor. It's a little bit. I think that Laguna is maybe a 3-horse in the shop.
Could be,
but this one does not bog down at all.
Yeah,
and I don't know if that has to do with the 3-phase or not.
Could be.
Yeah. So.
All right. There you go. I think that wraps it up for another episode of the Shop Notes Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks, or informed rebuttals to any of the nonsense that we talk about here based on our very limited experience, you can send that as an email to woodsmith@woodsmith.com, or even more fun, add to the conversation on our YouTube channel. Special shout out to Epilogue Laser and their cool set of tools that allow you to customize and make unique woodworking projects. You can check out all that they have at epiloguelaser.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.